You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
Welcome to T- Deep Space from N2K Networks. I'm Alice Carruth, producer of the T- Space Daily podcast. Deep Space includes extended interviews and bonus content for a deeper look into some of the topics we cover on our daily program. Through cutting-edge technologies and collaborative partnerships, Skyrora is reshaping the landscape of space exploration and positioning Scotland as a key player in the global space industry. Join us as we discuss Skyrora with their Head of Business Development.
My name is Derek Harris. I'm the Business Operations Manager for Skyrora and CEO of Ecoscene. We started roughly about 6 years ago, and we're a small launch company, so we're looking to launch small satellites up to 315 kilograms into low Earth orbits for sun-synchronous and polar from Scotland up in Saxe-Voord. Some of the things you might have seen in recent times is we have had a lot of suborbital attempts for smaller vehicles, the largest being last year that we launched actually from Iceland, which was a good adventure.
That's amazing. So you guys are working on sovereign launch capability in the UK. Can you tell us a bit about that process? Because the UK is not new to space. It's been one of the largest satellite suppliers for a long time, but launch is certainly a new process that's come over to the country.
Certainly. Well, it is a new process, but it's also an archaic one. And if I'm being a bit nice that way. So the UK actually did have a launch program back in the 1950s and 60s. So those rocketry experts out there will be sort of citing the Blue Streak, Black Knight projects, and of course Black Arrow for that, which flew from Woomera in 1971 for the Prospero mission. But after that, what wasn't well known to probably younger people in the generations is it was cancelled. To being a spacefaring nation and then to scrap it, we are the only country to do that, which is just unbelievable. Imagine taking all that data, throwing it in a skip and setting it on fire and having to start from scratch. That's really what happened. Thankfully, there are some documents that survived due to some of the engineers. Engineers don't like to get rid of their work so easily, so when we brought Black Arrow back from Australia, we donated that and some of the paperwork to the Farnborough Air and Space Transportation Museum, so please go and see it down there. But from scratch, really, I've now been with the company coming on 6 years. When we started out, there was 4 or 5 of us in a room, and it was basically building up departments. So to start with, highlighting who we wanted to help with their engines, who we wanted to build. So the bringing in of Dr. J.J. Marlowe from Kingston University. He was a professor down there. We've brought him in to head up our engineering here. We brought in talent from Dnipro in the Ukraine. They were, for those who may not know, Dnipro is the rocket city and has such a huge pedigree when it comes to anything space, especially engines and tanks, and actually ran most of the Soviet missions. And that's why we're seeing a big slowdown, not just because the sanctions on Russia, but also a lot of people still get their parts and engine capabilities from there. So it's had a huge knock-on effect to the space sector, the war that's going on at the moment. For us, we've been quite lucky because our team and any key members we had from there were already sort of brought across to work with our UK team and to do that knowledge transfer. So 6 years ago, from 4 people in a room, the first 2 years really was hard marketing and hiring. So marketing the company to get the name out there, hiring to get the right people in. So as I said, Dr. J.J. Marlowe being key there, who bringing up. Then from there, we've opened up the largest engine test site in the UK, which tests our 70 kilonewton engines, which is based just outside of Edinburgh. We now have our production facility out in Cumbernauld, which is roughly about 55,000 square feet, which even at that, it's a large piece of real estate, but it's still a little bit too small for where we want to get to. But small steps to get to where we need to be. We've got a bunch of suite of small vehicles which people may not know. So we started off with what was called Skylark Nano, roughly about a 2 meter tall, which similar to the rockets that you may see in and about local competitions. We went to Skylark Micro, which we launched from Iceland, which are similar, about 4 meters tall. And these are the sort of things you would see at the Spaceport America competitions that we've spoken about previously. We have Sky High, which is a hybrid, which is still currently on pause, so we can find somewhere to do it. And then we had Skylark L, which is our second largest. So at 11 meters long, that was what we launched attempt from Iceland last year in October. And I have to say, managing to get a launch attempt out of Iceland, almost a mile or two south of the Arctic Circle in October, I can't say how well the team did to do that. So that brings us on to our next SKL launch, which we're hoping to be within the next few months, to beginning of Q2 next year. And then obviously on to the main launch facility in the XL vehicle.
And that will be at Saxiford Spaceport in Scotland, am I correct? How much have you had to do to help make sure that the process is ready for you to be able to launch out of the UK?
That's been a big thing. In 6 years, it's been very, very progressive and a lot of help on all sides. So when I say help, I mean discussions back and forward with the spaceport and ourselves over requirements, the normal things you would expect from a launch company in a spaceport. But it goes deeper than that. It goes down to health and safety. It goes down to government and regulations. And even goes down, the biggest one for us, I would say, is the environmental aspect for the launch site. So I know there was huge amount of interaction with the public around us to make sure that Scotland is a very beautiful country and we want to remain that way, but we also want to be a space nation. So every single part of the journey has had that interaction, whether it be with the local community, whether it be with nature, historic Scotland, governmental levels. So there's been a huge amount of conversations over the last sort of 6 years from launchers, from launch sites, insurance companies, government ministers. It's been a long journey, and we're hopefully going to come to the fruition in the very near future.
So obviously the UK held its first space launch back in January of this year, which was a horizontal launch, slightly different to what you guys are going to do. Is the policy already in place for you to be able to do a vertical launch from Scotland, or is that still being written as you guys develop your rocket?
Very much. It's in place, and the licensing requirements are in place as well. So both spaceports and ourselves are going through those. I think the only thing that slowed that down, to be honest, was with COVID, because a lot of the staff had to be reallocated to help deal with that. But now that they're back, our case manager and the team down at the Civil Aviation Authority have been wonderful. It's that collaboration that I was speaking about earlier, talking back and forward. We know horizontal is different from vertical launch, and there will be some different challenges from what they've had to sort of do for passing that license. So having those open channels of communications has been great to do so. But we believe we're not far away from having that license. The spaceports are in the same boat in that regard, which means really the tech is almost there and almost built and ready to go. So it's as I said, it's nearly coming to fruition for the whole sector.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
So you guys have been, how do I put this, coined as being the new additive manufacturing company. Can you explain to me what it is that you guys are doing at Skyrora in that manner?
Yeah, so a large part of when we started out was realising there was not a fully functional supply chain in the UK and Europe that would help for launch. So when you look at things, either you were ordering from the US or individual people, one of the largest parts that we looked at was our engines. And to do these by hand and things like this would have cost a lot of money, taken a lot of time, and there was a lot of shipping. So the whole journey of the life cycle of the engine wasn't the best for production-wise, for monetary purposes as well, economically, environmentally, and any processing. So we looked at 3D printing. And this is where we've got that sort of additive manufacturing tag from. So we first off started with what was called Skyprint 1. And Skyprint 1 is very small 3D printer, and it was doing our gas chambers for our engines, and was a 3D printer on a robotic arm that allowed us to have sort of the 5-axis to spin it around, do what we needed to do. But then we decided we wanted to go bigger. And this is one that always makes me laugh, because everyone says they've got the biggest and best. And I think to this day, we believe we have the biggest and best 3D printer as the 10th of August 2023, just in case you're listening to this further down the line. So we've made a 3D printer, which we've named Skyprint 2. I can see a bit of a pattern with this. And what it does is 2 meters by 2 meters, and allows us, so it can allow us to print larger sections of the engine in one go. This cuts down on the amount of wastage, the time for that. So the powder with the DED printing allows us then to sort of soak up the rest of and hoover up the rest of the powder that's not used, so it can be reused again, and cutting down on waste. So from an economic point of view, environmental point of view there, we're saving a lot. But I think the new thing is, as well, is we've joined recently a consortium of about 13 companies. And these 13 companies were looking into bi-alloy metallic printing. So we're looking to see if we can print 2 metals at the same time against each other. So being able to print our normal engines in Inconel and titanium, or Inconel and copper, for example, for heat purposes and things like this, cutting down on weight, cutting down on costs. So we're really pushing out the barrel on that regards when we come to research around the 3D printing. So I think that's why we've got that tag a little bit. And as I said, the first time I seen it working, I thought the Skyprint 1 was pretty cool with the robotic arm moving about. But now I've seen Skyprint 2 working, but this thing is huge. Literally, the frame for it has to be easily maybe 3 to 4 meters tall, about 6 meters long. It's a huge piece of kit, and it's something that's not just going to help us, but we hope to sort of roll out in the future, so it can print things like turbine blades for other people and other aviation tasks as well. So it's possibly going to be a business on its own, I would expect.
That was going to be my next question. This seems like such incredible technology, almost feels wrong to keep it to yourselves. How are you going to benefit the rest of the aerospace and aviation industry across the UK with it?
Yeah, that's the big thing. So we're currently working on the certification with a few different people at the moment. NMIS, for those that don't know, is the National Manufacturers Institute of Scotland, based out of Strathclyde University, and they are helping to get it certified so we can start doing processing for other companies as well. Once we get to that point, what we hope to do is have multiple printers going, so one dedicated for our needs and the rocket engines, but then once we have those other ones, we will have a separate company rolling out that will be able to sort of take these contracts on and run from the same sort of facility or a nearby facility.
For those people that aren't used to hearing about Scotland being a launch place, what is the advantage of being able to launch from Scotland?
Well, I think the first one you go with would be the geographical for sun-synchronous and polar orbits. It's much easier to gain these orbits going from Shetland. For those who may not know where Shetland is Scotland, if you look at the top of the map of Scotland, there's normally a box that gets added there, and this is a bit of an annoyance to them, if I'm honest, because it kind of looks like they're nowhere near us. But it's roughly about an hour or so away from the mainland by flight. And if you go north, you pass Iceland, Greenland, and there's not a lot of land up there. So it's a perfect way to get into those inclinations. So we've got the geography for that. But I think what's also opening it up a lot is we hear this message that Glasgow makes the second most amount of satellites outside of the US at the moment. Those small satellites, it comes down to a sort of regulatory purpose. Imagine being able to build, launch, ensure everything all in the same jurisdiction and not have to worry about different ITAR or different regulations. This also gives it a bit of a benefit and a new game changer for them. So between regulatory, political with that, and obviously it's bringing back, and it's a different type of space, is what I would like to say. Is you have SpaceX, and they've done incredibly well with what they're doing, especially with the most recent attempts of the new vehicle. But Scotland's really trying to do it slightly differently. You're seeing a difference with the environmental approach, trying to be responsible. I like to use that term rather than friendly, because until we can get like zero carbon in any launch, it's always going to be as friendly as we can make it. But there is just a different attitude in Scotland, really, and the UK seem to be pushing that and leading that and sort of taking it from a grip and thinking, well, it's not building a new industry, but it's taking a new look from a different sort of fresh pair of eyes. And I think this is really what's attracted a lot of people to do it from Scotland.
What's coming up in the next 12 to 18 months with you?
I think the biggest one that we'll see coming along will be the SKL2, so Skylark 2 launching attempt. So at the moment we're talking with the local government for that and talking with Saxavord to see if we can launch from there. We've also opened up conversations again with Iceland, who we previously went with. So we hope to have that launching, I would say, within the next 6 months or so. The static testing of the first stage, the full qualification of our 70 kilonewton engines. These are the main milestones over the next sort of 12 to 16 months. From ourselves, what else could you see? Well, I would just say keep your eyes peeled and watch. We do like to post the videos from time to time on some of the testings and things, but there is a lot in the pipework that hopefully we can announce coming along in the near future.
Derek, thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to see what happens with Skyrora in the next coming months and years.
No, thank you very much for inviting me along, Alice. It was a pleasure.
That's it for T-Minus Deep Space for August the 19th, 2023. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at space@n2k.com or submit the survey in the show notes. Your feedback ensures we deliver the information that keeps you a step ahead in the rapidly changing space industry. This episode was mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Brandon Karth, our Chief Intelligence Officer is Eric Tillman, and I'm Alice Carruth. Thanks for listening.